Hello once again everyone, so sorry for the long delay on this series, but welcome back to the Zettel. Today we're finally going to be tackling the Krumphau, and joining me is Eric, one of my Germans. So we're going to be going over the first couple plays of the Krumphau. Now firstly, let's talk about how I like to throw the Krumpf and my methodology behind it. So for all of my Meisterhau, and I talked about this in the Zornhau section, everything is coming from this loaded position. They usually have a specialty position associated with them, so we didn't talk about Zornhut, for example, for the Zornhau, because that doesn't really appear or mentioned in the KDF. But from here on out, we're going to usually have an alternative position besides just the shoulder. But the idea is for throwing all of these, they need to be like Obers unless they are coming out of that specialty position. Now, the Krumpf is the first of our thumb grip techniques, meaning that it has the ability to cut without me. So essentially, when I do a Zorn or an Ober or whatever, I need to have my hands tied to my body, right? Everything needs to be in sequence. Sure, absolutely, I can get most of the cut done with my arms, but it's still reliant on this structure that I'm building. Thumb grip techniques are an exemption from that. I can cut perfectly hard with just the lever, because this can act independently of me. What this gives me the ability to do is I can be less connected to my footwork, hence crooked cut. I can now break the rule and be hands on the side of the front foot in both instances, which gives me a geometric advantage because my cut can happen without me. So, the idea here is for our first play is we're going to be countering the guard of Ox, which showcases how this works well. Now it should be noted, the Ox we are countering is left Ox, not right Ox, but here's why. Firstly, yeah, that's left Ox. Go back into right Ox real quick. Two things can happen. Whenever you cut at the opening here, that being here, with or without a Krumphau arrow, I like to make it look like an Ober first. Eric has two choices. His first choice would be to bring his tip over to his right to parry. Now, that's one of the more common things you'll see. It leads into Bogen. We're not necessarily scared of that because it's a very long time before he can come around and cut me. And that's kind of more the common response. So I'm really not worried about that. The more safe thing for him to do instead is to transition from right Ox into left Ox, because now I end up with a tip forward and presented. We're going to see this response a lot in just general winding when we get to that section, so it's his more common response in my opinion. So as such, if you do find someone in right Ox, the Krumpf does still counter it, but only from the perspective of he will be moving into left Ox, because that's his best option. It should be noted though, if he does attempt to do the Bogen, your Krumpf will actually still hit him. But we'll just show that real quick. So this is just an Ober. He does his tip across like a Bogen, boom, and then I would deal with that. If I do a Krumpf when I do that, I'm guaranteed to hit him. So that's not a very safe option. Heck, even just a good Ober can actually get through that. Instead, this time he will go into left Ox from right Ox when I do the Ober. So go ahead and go right. So I do just an Ober. See, I don't even want to step forward into that. It's not fun, right? But when I add the Krumpf into this, I get to destroy his structure. Now, when you do it purely against left Ox, you get slightly more benefit. I'm not diving in as much as I could because I want to talk through this. So go into just left Ox. We are not cutting at his arms. We are not cutting at his blade. What I am cutting at is this gap in his elbow. I want my cut to land right in there. The reason that this works is because if I just cut it over, he can resist very easily. With my Krumpf adding into it, now it gets that expulsion factor which will allow me to land down into either his face or more often his breast, and I can wedge this down. Now, you may notice that his sword tip is currently between us. One, I didn't have all the momentum behind it, but two, this is not actually scary to me. He can't reach me. And furthermore, he can't extend to reach me either. I've actually created a very good little bind, it just doesn't necessarily look super safe. When I add momentum to it, it's going to be even safer. So, go up and Ox. Here's how I like to throw it. You can throw it from above, that's the way I personally like to throw it, but you can also throw it out of the shoulder as is mentioned in the text. I push my arms forward like it's an Oberhau. I pass forward all the same, but when my arms get out to here, I throw that Krumpf into it by sticking my thumb up, and then my pommel goes over, getting me the expulsion I want, crushing his Ox and just hitting him dead. So here's that again. Now, sometimes, depending upon your distance, you may even end up lower. This is an equally good time for the Krumpf because Eric certainly cannot hit me now. It will depend upon what you get. Like I said, I like to aim into that little gap, and if I get above or below the arm, I don't really care. There's that again. No problem. Nice and safe. Now, that's our first play. That's countering Ox at dominant side. Everything's pretty great. Big things you need to work on is make sure your arms are nice and forward. Make sure your pommel is getting over your arm. Even if it's only a little bit, it makes a huge difference. Now, our next play. The next thing you can do with the Krumph is you can counter against the Ober. This is going to be the same idea. It's also going to introduce us to a new position, that being Schwunghut, barrier. Now, there are two forms of Schwunghut. There is where my long edge is up and my hands are uncrossed, and there is where my long edge is down and my hands are crossed. The trick with making Schwunghut work for you is don't make Schwunghut obvious. The trick here is that I am duping him into cutting at my head. There are a lot of different ways you can get here. The simplest way is I was already in a low position. I've made this opening clear and it looks like he's going to take it. Just move your thumb over and you're ready to go. So, the way I like to do this play is I will start off in essentially Eisenfort, some sort of low guard. I could also be in Ober and just do a small foot change as I do this, and I'll just roll my hands over as he's getting close to it. But what I do is I spring well away to the side, and I throw my pommel over, which allows me to cut down onto his arms. If you spring forward, you may be able to hit their head, but I caution you not to do this. One, stepping closer toward him means that if I muck up, I am definitely going to get hit with his sword. Two, is that I'm cutting at his hands. I would much prefer that he try and defend those hands, and then I can work in, as opposed to cutting at his head, him either choosing to defend his head or more likely to hit me because I'm so close to him that all he sees is opening. I'd rather stay out at distance. Not to mention, this is kind of a rent-free hit, right? I hit him, I can move on, I can do a lot of other things from here. And we'll see that again later. So, I'm in some sort of low position, he's coming in, I already did my little sneaky transition, I cut his hands, and if I need to, I can then follow through with cutting his head and doing other things. Make no mistake, the Krumph is a wicked powerful cut. You can do a lot with it. Now, it can also be done on the other side. Now, the way I like to do this one is I like to sweep into the cut. So what I'm going to do is, rather than being here and turning over, instead, I will cut from above, and I will turn into Schwunghut on my left side, which gives me a nice kind of rebound. So, I'm going to cut from out of distance, and we'll go ahead and have you step a little forward, Eric. I want you to do a small retreat as I cut. I'm going to cut at Eric to get him to retreat slightly. He will then try to come in with a rebound. So I'll cut, I sweep out, I can now spring away and hit it. What's also really nice about the Krumph on this side is because my hands are uncrossing, it can actually reach further. Crossed, this is as far as it can go while being effective. Uncrossed, I can reach all the way outside of myself if I desire. So while the opening will make me a lot closer to him than normal, the benefit is that I can be very, very far away from him. And since my target is always his sword arm, I'm okay if I just get the one. Speaking of which, let's talk about targeting real quick. When it comes to the Krumph on both sides, my target is this band of muscle on his right arm. If he's left-handed, it'll be his left arm. But the point is, if I get this, that means my sword is going to be laying across both wrists. That's an easy bind. We'll get to the weird wacky roll with hand slices another time. If I'm coming from this side, I'm guaranteed to destroy the sword arm, and my tip can still control anywhere he might go. Again, it binds on him, making me safe. So one more time on this side, and we'll get to the next action. So I cut, he retreats, bring out, get that hit, and then again, I can turn to other things. We'll switch back this way. So, nice and straightforward so far. Schwunghut's great, cool. How can we now combine those two things? Next is going to be dealing with the direct cut. Now this is again where the whole, it looks like an Oberhaut till it's not, really matters. Now as to whether or not he's throwing just a free cut at the opening or if he's doing something more like a Zorn, this works either way. If he's doing more of a free cut just here, then just go ahead and take the arms because he's just cutting wide. If he is cutting more narrow and for me, this is where I now need to be concerned about binds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dupe him into believing that he's about to meet the resistance he expects. We already did this with the Zornhaut play. So I'm at the shoulder, for example. He's cutting in, he's anticipating us doing this, we're now in the scales, and then we will fight, right? He may even be working on starting to resist where I'm going to be. The trick with it is the Ober can turn into a Krumph relatively late in life, right? So slow motion, I can cut out, and it's only when they're sparking together that I throw my left hand under as my right thumb comes up. That gets me his flat, and can take his structure and spin it. the more you make this look like an over and just let it be your left hand suddenly going a new direction, not only the less your right arm will hurt the more you do this, but also the more deceptive it will be. Because now there was like no lead up. Now I will say, with blunted swords, this is going to happen a lot more, where he's close to my guard. So bear that in mind. With sharps, they are not going to have this kind of effect. But it's 6.5 dozen either way, works the same. Now you can also do this from the Schrumpfhout. The trick with it is it's going to be a little more obvious. I like to cast this a bit more forward as opposed to across, because I want to make sure I'm binding with his sword. What some people do with this play is that they turn it into a whack, then back. I did that too. It works particularly well. So you just basically, I call it the reading rainbow. If he's cutting, that's nice and simple. Just pure horizontal, pure vertical, X and Y axis. Boom, he's dead. The problem with that is, if he's deceptive and pulls his, he feints, oh no, if only we knew someone who likes to do that, right? You are dead meat, right? Because going back and forth is not that easy, which again is why you step with it, but still. But instead, if I make sure that when he's cutting in, I'm casting this forward toward his blade, I'm binding with the Krumph, not just throwing a Krumph, he's going to have to withdraw his blade through a lot more to get away. And furthermore, if I don't meet resistance because I was anticipating that, now I'm in a bind and I can fight from there. And we'll see that again in the later Krumph plays, but from a reverse perspective. Either way, though, I digress. Okay, great, so what do you do to hit him? So this gets you your bind. Now how do you hit him? Once I have gotten my bind secured, all I need to do is, as soon as they're sparking together, I'm going to keep my right hand where it is, pull with my left, and that will turn my edge over. Now, caveat, if you find you're one of those people where that happens, because I was talking through it and not paying attention, if you move your right arm at all, you're always going to catch with your crossguard and you'll end up doing this. That can be nice. If you're intending to lock their sword out, cool. But the problem is, it means that there's now a barrier between you and your target. I'm not hitting Eric right now because there's a thing in the way. So, the more you make it with your left hand, the more it will be it turns over as opposed to it goes over. Key difference there. So if you find that's happening routinely, it's your right hand moving when it should just be your left. Either way though, he cuts in, I cut in, I bind, turn over, hit him. That time we were deep enough that we ended up cross-drawing cross-guard. I don't care. Let's go again. There we go. And that time I stepped a little forward too soon, but either way, the point is, once you turn over from this, it can turn into a cut, it can turn into a thrust. All these good. You can even turn it into a Mutirin, for those of you that remember. You can turn this into a lot of great grappling actions. There's a lot of fun stuff there. But the biggest thing about it is just to let your lever start working for you. And this will lead into the rest of the text very well, because it is somewhat progressive. Zorn was about getting you to have this structure, this default stance. Krumph is about teaching you that your hands can do other things in combination with your thumb grip, or not, to get new results. And then we'll go into Zwerg, Shield, etc. But, for right now, to review what we've gone over. First, I have my Krumph against Ox. If he's in right Ox, I don't care. I still cut the same to get him to move into left Ox. We'll go ahead and just go left Ox. For left Ox, I cut the same. I cut down onto his blade, destroy that, striking him, everything's great. For him going in with the free over, I've made an opening, he cuts in, spring away. Alternatively, I can do it on the other side. Both are the same, cutting to the same band of muscle. He is cutting down the line at me. I cut like an over, but I bind, and then I may hit him freely with either a thrust or cut, however I see fit. Now, just a couple of last-minute notes on those things, and then we'll be done. So firstly, from using the Krumph, make it all your left hand. All the right hand does is put your thumb on the blade. From then on, it's all about the left. The more you can kind of compartmentalize that, you are not going to start hurting your arm as much. Because I'll tell you, especially if you do a form of single-hand swordsmanship, your right arm is already working hard enough. You need to let this do the work, or you're going to burn out your arm. There's a reason that the Entrustau and the Vecca start from low positions with a single hand, because you need that momentum. This you don't, but if you try to act like you don't, you're going to burn out your arm. 2, make your Krumphs and all of your Krumphs relatively deceptive ones. It should either look like an over till it's not. You should disguise your Schrumpfhout as much as possible. And when it comes to hitting the Ox, that's probably the hardest one. Be opportunistic about it. if he approaches and takes Ox, like from the get-go, he probably knows that you're thinking about Krumphau, right? Don't try to throw it here, because he's ready. What it should be is things along those lines where, you know, we are fencing whatever, he moves up into that position, and you have something ready to go. Because you can also launch it from a surprisingly large amount of places, which is why I like to throw it from here. If I can get someone worried about me cutting from above and they take that guard, that's Chrome City. But, either way, all these things should work out very well. Next week, or whenever I next film this, we shall tackle the further Chrome plays, where we've got a couple more deceptions built off of this. But for now, thank you very much, Eric. And thank you all very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.